The CRL Commission has found that calls for controversial Prophet Bushiri to leave the country are discriminatory. This follows a probe into the deaths of 3 people during a stampede at the church in December last year. The Commission recommended that Bushiri find a suitable venue for his church. ENCA's Tseho Moahi was there at that briefing and joins us now from our newsroom. And so, Tseho, there was a lot of reaction and debate about the events that led to that stampede at the ECG church. It seems the CRL Commission says Prophet Bushiri was not in the wrong in this case.
Absolutely. Good afternoon to us. Yes, so the CRL Rights Commission saying that Prophet Bushiri was not in the wrong, that he complied fully with what exactly needed to be given to the city of Tshwane and what he needed to give concerning what needed to be given rather to the city for compliance reasons, a compliance certificate. So that is exactly what happened, and they have found that he actually was compliant, and they have really said that, as you mentioned, that calls for him to leave South Africa are actually discriminatory, and they've also said that calls for the church to close down are unwarranted because he is being compliant according to the city of Tshwane.
Did they look at this particular aspect, Tseho, of how the whole aftermath of the stampede was dealt with? I remember you and I having conversations about, the handling of the bodies of the deceased, the questions that were coming up about that particular aspect, or did they leave that out altogether of their investigation?
Well, they did speak quite a bit to Lasizwe about what could actually be done, or how they did not want to go into direct conversation about what happened on that particular day and how the bodies were moved. We do know that there was a lot of conversation about how these bodies were actually moved from the one point to the other. But they did, when the Prophet was there, Prophet Bushiri, when he was making his submissions earlier this week, he did mention that the church's paramedics were the ones that actually moved the bodies to a clinic within the vicinity. So that is what they had then said. But the CRL Commission saying that they don't want to get too much into what exactly happened to those particular bodies, but they are saying that the investigations are underway. The police are investigating. But what really does bother them, Lasizwe, is the fact that these police investigations are happening without the police actually being on site on that particular day, and they were supposed to be on site. So that is exactly what really bothers the CRL Commission the most, about the fact that the police are investigating. The only account that we actually have about what happened to those bodies is from the church itself, the ECG church.
And there's a context to all of this, Tseho, isn't there? I mean, the CRL recently had that long, dragging investigation into what they were calling the possible abuse of people's religious beliefs and what transpires in some of these churches. I imagine that the ECG church will be welcoming all of this. Have you been able to speak to them?
Absolutely. So the spokesperson, Maynard Monywahi, when he spoke to us, he mentioned that they really are pleased as the findings from the church, but they are still studying the findings and just the recommendations, the main recommendations that were put forward by the church, mainly really putting the city of Tshwane in somewhat a bad light, with them saying that they weren't compliant with certain issues that had to deal with various acts within the city of Tshwane. So they have really been put in a somewhat a bad light, including the South African Police Service, who weren't on site on that particular day, and they were supposed to be there. But of course, then for the recommendations that they've made for the ECG church, just saying that they really need to find themselves a proper venue to actually host their services, and the first service is expected to take place on the 3rd of February, which is this coming Sunday. So they really have welcomed this report as a church, and they're saying that they aren't closed off and they aren't cutting off the suggestion or the possibility of them actually paying some funds to the family, a compensation fund for those that have lost their lives. Just that for those that it could have happened rather to Lasizwe, that the people that have lost their lives were actually breadwinners within the family, so they don't want them to feel that particular gap. So the church saying that they haven't really closed off that particular idea, and they are still going to be studying the report completely, just to see how they can better their services as well, and also how they can just be better in what they do every Sunday.
All right, thank you so much for that. That is ENCA's Tseho Moahi, who's been tracking that story involving Prophet Bushiri and the outcome of the CRL Rights Commission. Coming up.